Welcome to Miniquest 64. I'm Sergey. I got a new box and 24 hours and a hungry Misha. So let's do this. We start with the bases, square ones in my case. Why did I choose the Start Collecting Skaven Pestilens box for this project? Well, I wanted to paint something I never painted before and could be used for Warhammer Fantasy, but was still available to buy. And since I have the Island of Blood set unpainted, these guys could join the Skaven army. I put all the bases on double-sided tape, arranged them, mixed some milliput and green stuff and put that on the bases. Then I made everything wet and rolled over with a texture roller from Green Stuff World. Simple and efficient. Since that would need a lot of time to dry, I did that as a first step. Then I started to cut out all the models from the spruce and clean up the mold lines. I think I could have done a better job at this, but I was scared that the whole building process would take way too much time. I set up an assembly line, did the bodies first, then the arms, and so on. But why? Why do a painting marathon like this? There are many reasons why I chose to do this. To buy another Start Collecting box was the obvious one. I would also be able to see what I'm capable of and how long I could paint in one session. It would also give me some insight at how difficult this could be. Goobertown's 24 hours marathon with the old Greenskins box still is one of my favorite painting videos, and it did inspire me to try this out myself. So if you're seeing this brand against all odds, thank you for being such an inspiration. After the bases have dried, I put some PVA glue and sand on them. That would need some time to dry too. Now, after all the plague monks have been built, I can continue with the artillery. Hopefully, I can paint everything without much sub-assemblies. At this point, I had built all the plague monks and the plague claw, and the screaming bell was also halfway finished. Everything, including the bases, would be ready for priming soon. Regarding the time it took me to reach that point, I was positively surprised, because I didn't think that I could paint this whole box in 24 hours without an airbrush. So working as fast as possible from the get-go definitely paid off. Yes, you ugly time thingy, I get you. I will regret gluing this together, but that's a problem for future Sergey. If you would like to do something similar, I could give you some infos about the difficulties of this project. Firstly, the planning. I spent 2 full days of planning and testing the light, camera and microphones. You don't want to record for 24 hours straight and have a shitty record. So I was in constant fear of something going wrong with the camera. I had a webcam for the close shots and my smartphone for the time-lapse. But no matter what I did, my lighting was never in a good position for both of them. I guess I need to upgrade my gear in the future. Otherwise, I wrote many lists of painting procedure. Things like a guide with every step that would be necessary to take with a rough time estimation for every step. In which order do I paint the miniatures and different parts of those? What technique would I use, and if I had some extra time, what could I do to improve the paint job? Which colors would I use when? Do I use too much, and would it be possible to reduce them by using the same colors on different steps? Do I still have enough color variation overall? Is it possible to use a color on a different model to cut some time? That were all questions I need to answer. Another big thingy for me personally was the way in which I had to paint these miniatures to get the job done in time. Normally, I would get some kind of paranoia if a detail on my model isn't painted in a color it's supposed to have, with 8 layers of paint and a wash of course. But this time I just primed the models black and white, and a simple thick layer of contrast paint was all they got. That was a very unusual way to paint for me, and I did need some time to deal with it mentally. How could this still look good at the end? I am a very small and new YouTuber and still need to prove to myself that I am good enough to do this, that I can produce something useful for the community and for you. That's a thought that terrifies me every day. I really start to like these contrast paints. I haven't used them much before this project. Maybe I will use them more in the future. Before I started, I thought that the Plague Monks would take the most amount of my painting time, and by the time we reached the 7th hour, I hope that I was right. I still got the Plague Claw and Screaming Belt to paint. Hopefully those won't take that much time. I mean, they are big, but it's mostly wood, metals and stone. These little Plague Monks on the other side have so many details even though their sculpts are pretty old. There are so many little additional reds and even another grey seer from the Plague Furnace on the spruce, but sadly I don't have the time to make the models more complex. I won't leave out the mouth, tooth and eyes though. For the tongue, I used some Screamer Pink and a wash of Druchii Violet, Wildwood Contrast for the wooden parts and Everland Sunsand, a little Abaddon Black and a glaze of Bloodletter for the eyes. I painted all the bones, claws, teeth, parchment and belts with dead white from Vallejo. The Citadel equivalent would be ceramic white, I think. Later, we will cover all those areas with the contrast paint Skeleton Horde. That will take a lot of my time, but I think it will be the fastest way nevertheless. The whole time I was painting, I listened to the audiobooks from Harry Potter, read by Stephen Fry. I got through the first 2 books easily and even started the 3rd. I could listen to that charming voice for hours and never feel bored. My girlfriend Janina was a great support through this project. She showed in from time to time to bring me some sandwiches and drinks, while my dog Misha dropped by to check if I still had some leftovers to share. He never gets tired of trying, but he won't get anything, as long as Janina is watching. The Skeleton Horde contrast paint is one of my favorites so far. I guess I will always stack some of these together with Wildwood. By the hour number 10, I went through some highs and lows, feeling tired for a short while and then a fresh energy I can't explain. This went on for hours. I need to get these Plague Monks finished. That will give me a huge amount of motivation for sure. All the medals are painted with some gunmetal or lead belcher, a wash of Nuln oil and some highlights with silver. Every time I felt exhausted, I tried to paint something simpler in the next step. Here you can see me painting the rims of all the bases with Abaddon Black. Right now it's 10 o'clock in Germany and pretty dark outside already. I wonder how long I will be able to paint with full concentration in the middle of the night. I mean, I'm perfectly fine, but I bet the next day will feel like a hangover. I wonder how the guys from Gubo Town, Miniquest and Midwinter Minis managed to paint for so many hours. Maybe I just need some more practice. Lastly, the final details on the Plague Monks. I used some flat red from Vallejo and Renox hide from Citadel with a 0-0 brush to mimic some drawing on all the parchments. That didn't took as much time as I thought. but increased the overall look of the unit by a huge amount of awesomeness. Then I just needed to get all the reds from the round bases I attached them with superglue to glue them on with square ones. You have to pay attention though, with square bases you need to place every model in a precise position so it doesn't interfere with the other models from the other sides. That can be tricky at a time, but nothing looks so cool than a whole block of minis on square bases close to each other. So the first 12 hours are almost gone and I finished the plague month. Now onto the artillery. For the warpstone and green flames, I used the technical color Hex Race Flames from Citadel on a heavily white dry brushed surface. That took hours to dry. Then I continued with a dry brush of Ulthuan Grey and a very thick layer of Waywatcher Green and some Lamentas Yellow. It already started to look nice. For the runes I used some dead white as base coat and some heavy layers of Waywatcher Green all around the place. Now, with the Plague Monks finished, I knew that this challenge would be possible to finish. I still got 12 hours left and that should be enough time. I haven't glued all the wheels to the frames yet and am now able to give them a quick wash with wildwood on both sides. That should be much more comfortable. Then I switched between the frame, the stones of the Screaming Bell, the Grey Seer and the Ogre. Each time I painted a layer of wildwood on a frame. I had to paint something else because that needed time to dry. And there's a lot of wood to paint and dry. I also cursed past Sergei, the idiot that decided to glue all the frames together. Now I needed to paint everything on the inside and bend my fingers to reach all the areas. That took me a lot of time and nerves. I must have missed though how many metal parts there were as I built the model. But now that I needed to paint all of them, I immediately felt my concentration sink to an all-time low. That was so tedious and boring. But don't get me wrong, these Skaven models are so much fun to paint overall. I would not have believed it just from the looks on the box. It just seems like a huge amount of brown and green, but there's so much more to discover on every millimeter of all these models. While looking through my paints to find some inspiration to paint the vomit on the plague claw, I discovered an old paint pot I never used, called Vomit Brown. I just had to do it. So a base coat of Vomit Brown and a wash with Carabao Crimson, followed by some layers of Vomit Brown mixed with dead white. Disgusting and beautiful. But now, let's talk about something far more interesting. Let's talk about you. Have you been doing something similar like this? Like a time challenge or painting miniatures under time pressure? If so, what were your reasons to start such a challenge? What were your reasons to don't start such a challenge? Did you stick to the box art or did you have your own color schemes? What were the difficulties in your project? And how did you overcome them? How did you feel after the challenge? Was it worth the effort? Tell us your story down in the comments. I've never done such a big painting session before, so I needed to figure out how to get everything properly recorded and how to plan something like this. But I painted under time pressure before, mainly because I wanted to make painting videos every week since I started this channel in November last year. For painting schemes, I like to stick to the box art, but with some own colors to give everything a personal touch. That way, I still can compare my painted models with the paint job of the box art and see how close I came and where I have to put in more effort. The challenge though was very exhausting. I worked overtime in my job so many times, but this was quite something different. It took me 3 days to finally recover from this and work efficiently on the editing for this video. So if you ask yourself why this wasn't coming out last Saturday, that's the reason for it. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to stick to my own release schedule. I hope though that you could enjoy this video in its polished and non-rushed form. I'm already amazed about the quality of my low quality paint job. I rushed through all these hours. I thought it would look far worse than it does. But now that we're more than halfway through, I can't wait to show you the finished results. For these quick and simple rust effects, I used a heavy watered down skag brown, which I painted on every nut and bolt, as well as some Nihilak oxide for the belts. And as a final step, some dirty down rust, which I've been using in my arcane diorama too. A heavy thick layer right out of the bottle in some eye-catching areas should be more than enough. The plague monks got some too on all of their weapons. If you would like to see more of my projects, consider to subscribe to the channel. Every subscription counts and matters a lot to me. For the next big project, I'm planning to open and paint one of my old starter sets from Warhammer Fantasy in the next couple of weeks. But as for this project, I think we've come to an end. Now it's been 18 hours and I'm pretty much done. I'm finished. I'm satisfied with the models. I started yesterday at 12 AM and still got 7 hours left, or 6.5 hours left. And yeah, I'm done. And now let's have a look at our models and get some sleep. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. And finally, the full time lapse without any commentary.